So council, tonight we'll begin to add Youth Councilor Nog's advisory vote, not on consent or adjournment, but on the business items.
I am prepared.
All right.
We'll see how we do.
Thanks for the photos, Council President Lube. They were great.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed them.
She joined us on the meeting that we had earlier today to review some grant funding. She was very opinionated.
Had a lot to say, did she?
Lot to contribute.
All right, we got a full house. Mr. Nollup, let me know when we're clear to start. All right, I will call this Tigard City Council meeting to order. City Recorder Krager, please call roll.
Council President Lube.
Here.
Councilor Shaw.
Here.
Mayor Snyder.
Here.
Youth Councilor Nog.
Here.
Councilor Goodhouse.
Here.
Councilor Newton.
Here.
All right, Mr. Nollup, would you mind putting the flag up, and I'll ask everyone to mute themselves and participate in the Pledge of Allegiance on their own. All right. Thank you, Mr. Nollup. Councilor staff, any non-agenda items? City Manager Reimer, I seem to recall you may have one.
Yes, we do. Good evening, Mayor and councilors, as well as my teammates and community members. We do have one addition that our city attorney will review with you. It is for the extension of our emergency declaration. It's set to expire on August 31st. And so we wanted to bring that forward to you as an additional item tonight. And just for clarification, we did add minutes to the original agenda, and then when it was republished, it has those in the agenda, just for clarification.
On the consent agenda, correct?
Correct. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. So we will handle the non-agenda item at the end under number 8 on the agenda. So let's move on to public comment. Assistant City Manager Nyland, did you have any follow-up to previous public comment?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. We did not receive written public comment at last week's meeting because we did not have a meeting. We did have one caller at our August 10th meeting, and he shared his experience with our unhoused residents. We have continued conversations with that community member and others around this ongoing effort. You'll hear more about those efforts later this evening, including recommendations from our homeless task force. And here's a fun fact for you, that the task force recommendations that you're going to hear from are from our 2017 homeless task force. That was not Tigard's first effort on this issue. We had convened a task force in 1994, 2001, and the most recent convening was in 2017. That is my report for this evening.
Thank you very much. That just highlights how challenging and enduring this situation is. All right, let's move on to the Tigard Area Chamber of Commerce report out. In Community Engagement Manager Love, are you on the line?
I am. Good evening, Council. Nice to see you all.
Good evening.
Leadership Tigard program, our applications are currently open for our class of 2022. The deadline is coming up on September 23rd for anybody that would like to participate. We're estimating the class will land probably around 18 participants this year, which we're really excited about. And then we had 6 businesses join the chamber in July. And on Thursday, August 19th, we partnered with the surrounding chambers of commerce in Washington County and also the chair of the Washington County Board of Commissioners to hold a restaurant listening session. And then we also assisted in August the City of Tigard staff on hosting a business listening session with the business community on the topic of homelessness. Our next government affairs meeting is going to be on September 16th. And that should be just ending the legislative session or right around there. So we'll have some good updates then. And then we're looking at hosting during the first week of October a panel discussion on hiring during a tight job market in partnership with the surrounding Chamber of Commerce as well. And then we host networking every single Thursday at 7:30. Until 8:45 in the morning. We are going back and forth between being virtual and in person, so people can check out our event calendar to see if we will be online or if we will be in person. For networking this week, we will be virtual, and then next week we will be virtual as well, and will be hosted by the Business Recovery Center. And then for the Tigard Farmers Market, we're still open. We are open every Sunday from 9 a.m. till 1:30 p.m. in downtown Tigard on Tigard Street and in the Rotary Plaza area. We are accepting vendor applications for different types of vendors. So we're encouraging people to check out the website and learn about becoming a vendor at the market. And then Catherine Wiley has taken over the market manager role. And so she is the new Tigard Farmers Market manager. And then I have transitioned to full-time chamber as working in membership and community engagement still. And then for the Tigard Downtown Alliance, we had the 2021 Art Walk, which was a huge success. We are glad to have something happen this year, have an event that was able to take place successfully. And then Tigard Drinks for Good was also very successful, and the program raised over $300 for the Tualatin Valley Creates organization. And then currently the Tigard Downtown Alliance is working on figuring out what the Trick or Treat Main Street and Small Business Saturday and the holiday tree lighting could possibly look like, while keeping in mind the construction that will be taking place in downtown Tigard, also COVID pandemic fun. So that is my update for you. Does anybody have any questions? No?
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, we'll move on to written public comment. City Recorder Krager, I don't believe we had any. Is that correct?
That's correct. We didn't receive any written comment.
All right, anyone that wishes to make phone and public comment live tonight may do so by calling 503-966-4101. Again, 503-966-4101. Mr. Nolip, are there any callers in the queue now?
Mr. Mayor, no callers in the queue at this time.
All right, thank you. Let me know if we get any, and I would just ask that you interrupt verbally, because I know you've Teams messaged me before, but in the middle of the meeting I can't see that. So if you wouldn't mind just interrupting us or at a breaking point, let me know. That would be great. Let's move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is used for routine items, including council meeting minutes and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for this meeting. These items may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Council members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. And tonight on the consent agenda, there is a proclamation designating September 1st as Back to School Appreciation Day, and then approving city council meeting minutes for 4 different meetings, including the one that City Manager Reimer was referring to that was not posted in the original packet, but was published in a follow-up sort of fix to the agenda. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I think our community is probably excited to proclaim, Back to School Appreciation Day. And so with that, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder roll call vote.
Council President Lube,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Mayor Snyder,
Yes.
Councillor Goodhouse,
Yes.
Councillor Newton.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the consent agenda is adopted unanimously. And Youth Councilor Nog, we are, just as a reminder, we're not going to take a vote, not have your advisory vote on some items, so that is one of them. So I'm not forgetting that. We're on it. Okay, next item on the agenda is to receive a capital improvement plan update. City Engineer Wisniewski.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I'm here today to deliver the quarterly capital improvement plan update, and I'm going to share my screen really quick for the PowerPoint. I just start by saying that you'll see the typical red, yellow, green light concept for the status of each project, and just want to say that some of the yellows are really attributed to some of our staffing levels right now. In the engineering field, we're seeing that there's a little bit of a struggle right now with filling vacancies, and I think it's just the nature that we're in right now of doing that. It's nothing that the city is doing, it's just one of the things we're dealing with. So we're actively recruiting, we're working on gearing up our resources, but I just want to let everybody know that some of the yellow is coming from some of our staff resource availability. As we go through, if you have any specific questions, go ahead and chime in. I'm not here to ask for any specific action item, just more to give the report. And I'll definitely reserve time at the end of the presentation for dialogue and commentary on any questions you may have for me. So with that, we'll get started. We're going to cover the projects in the order of parks, streets, the water system, sanitary sewer projects, stormwater, facilities, and then we'll wrap up with a few fun photos at the end. So start out with some parks projects. The boardwalk and walkway project out at Dirksen Nature Park has been combined with the off-street parking lot project. They're 100% design. We're just working on obtaining the final permits from CWS, and that project will be moving along as planned. So the little bit of schedule delay is because we made the decision to combine those two projects. The glowing red on this sheet is unfortunately no surprise that it's the Faneuil Creek Trail RFFA grant project. The construction phase has been moved to to the summer of 22 and 23. And that's mostly because of some hurdles that we're coming up with right now on some easements and some coordination on some utility conflicts that we came across late in the game. What I have to say on that one is in about the next month, maybe 2 months, I'll have more solid answers from Odot and from our design team on where that project will really fall for schedule. And my plan with that one is to draft a memo to council outlining all the details of the project. And at that time, if you want me to come back, I'll definitely come back to council and have more conversation then. But I at least want to get a memo with all the details in front of you when we have a more solid schedule and really dive into explaining why we're having another delay. Budget is red because of all the previous budget issues we had. We currently don't see any additional budget issues, but that one will always be red just because of the history on the project. Park major maintenance. One thing I want to highlight on that one is the Cook Park ADA dock. On my slide here, it says grant writing. I'm actually happy to report that we received the Marine Board grant for the design phase, and there's a verbal commitment that an additional grant will be wrote and then secured for the construction of that once the design is completed. So that one is moving along as well. Parks Master Plan, that one is scheduled to come back to council for the September 21st workshop. So the final report is being produced and being drafted for the workshop coming up. Universal Plaza, we're going through the procurement process. We have received the proposals, did interviews, and we have a general contractor construction manager selected and working through getting them on contract so that we can move forward with the project as scheduled for next summer. Red Rock Creek Trail Plan, that one is currently being scoped for proposals to go out. That's a Odot administered federal grant. Currently it's green and we're going to strive to keep that one green. You'll see a little bit of common theme here with projects on federal aid projects that they tend to not stay green, and we're doing everything we can to solve those problems on our federal aid projects. The Cook Park softball and baseball infield project, that's been completed. I believe we talked about that in a previous update, and I do have some additional photos of that project at the end of the presentation. And the Fannel Creek Trail Alignment Study, that is, we have the 100% final copy right now that we had a few comments on, and that's going back this week to the consultant to wrap up, and that project is scheduled to be completed in advance of the IGA expiration date of September 21st or September 30th. So we're about a month away of putting the bow on the Fannel Creek Trail Alignment Study. Moving into street projects, give you some stats from this year's pavement management program. We completed almost 21 miles of slurry seal, 4,063 feet of pavement rehab, and we also took care of 3 backlog streets. Very happy to report that we were able to, the 3 backlog streets were Alderbrook, which is between Durham and Alderbrook Circle, a portion of 76 south of Bonita, and also a stub street of 76 north of Varnes. The Bike Ped program continues to fund various other projects around the city. We take some pedestrian traffic counts. We have the slow your roll signs, traffic calming on 79th, the your speed feedback signs, just to name a few. The Upper Boones Ferry Durham Adaptive Signals project, we're showing that one as yellow right now on this schedule. The original plan was to be under construction prior to school beginning this year, and I am working with Odot in Washington County right now to get an updated schedule, and unfortunately at this time I don't have a solid answer on what their delays are, where we're at with it, other than it's looking like closer to November for the start time on that project. But I'll be able to provide more information as soon as I have that.
Joe, I just want to point out that I believe that project is now on its 3rd city engineer. So the project is outlasting city engineers, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, I think there's more than one project on here that we might be able to say that about. So one of my goals is to keep that from happening. So we'll hopefully I'm here for a little while and we don't have that as a common theme. But moving on to Roy Rogers Road, that project is right now on schedule to be completed as per contract time. The street is actually open to traffic currently. If you head out that way, there's some remaining work items that you might see some traffic control here and there set up for a lane closure as they do final restoration and punch list items. There is some water main Willamette water supply work that still needs to take place, but right now that schedule's up in the air a little bit because of the the drought we're in right now and just keeping an eye on the water usage for their disinfection process. So it's not an active main or anything to worry about, but that may impact the schedule as we go on, but it is open to traffic. So it should be a pretty minor impact to the public. The 121st project, that's being managed by Washington County. There's a little bit of delay on schedule right now just with utility relocation and right away, but for the most part that project is moving along quite well. The next two projects, North Dakota Street Bridge and the Tigard Street Bridge, they're two separate projects, but they really impact each other as far as schedule. North Dakota Street Bridge is an Odot grant, and we have all the fun hurdles to deal with getting contracts issued as part of a federal aid project. And right now, my concern on that project is we're 18 months into the process of just getting a notice to proceed for our consultant. I'm being told by Odot that we're very close. It's under one of their final reviews, and that we should be getting underway. But we're showing it as a yellow on budget and schedule just because of the delays and the uncertainty of, construction costs and where things are going, that there could be some impacts to the budget if there's much more delay here. But we're definitely working with Odot. It's been escalated up the ranks. Their folks higher up has definitely put pressure on this project to get the contract awarded so that we can move forward with design. And why I say it impacts the Tigard Street Bridge project is both of these streets are basically the detour for each other. And Tigard Street, even though it's local funded, we can't have it under construction at the same time as North Dakota. So with the uncertainty of the North Dakota schedule right now, it just plays into the difficulty of scheduling Tigard Street. But the RFP for design will be going out soon for Tigard Street, and we'll get that under design and be ready to bid it, so that when we have a solid schedule determined for North Dakota, we'll work Tigard Street into that to lessen the impacts to the motoring public and pedestrians as much as possible. A few more street projects here. Happy to report the Wall Street Tech Center Drive project is completed now. Our slideshow does say they're working on punch list items, but they just finished them. So we're working on project closeout and moving forward with nice wrap up on Wall Street Tech Center. There's a new traffic signal out at 72nd, and that's going to be a nice connection out to Hunziker to 72nd with all the developments in that area.
Joe, I will just say that having driven that a couple times now, it is beautiful.
Yeah, it's really nice going through there, and if you went through there recently, you may have seen that the Wall Street project is now breaking ground and right at the corner of Wall Street and Hunziker. So there's more work taking place. Development is taking off in the area. It's going to be a great thing for that location. The transportation system plan update. We are looking at wrapping that project up close to the first of this year. There's been a few staff changes at the consultant team, and then just with some of the delays associated with public outreach and things with the pandemic, we've added a few months to that schedule, but still within budget and reasonably within our original schedule. So by around the first of the year, we'll be coming back to council with the TSP. Let me see. The Froing Street Sidewalk Infill Project, we're nearing a complete design. We're finding out that the construction estimate is over budget. So we show that one as yellow right now. We are going back to the county and to CDBG to request some additional funding on that project. So I'll report back after we get a decision from the grant folks if we're going to secure the extra money or not. We're hopeful that that'll come through and it won't be much of an impact, but there is a overrun, so we're showing it as a little bit of concern right now on budget.
Joe, how big?
Right now, we're probably looking at potential, if the grant coverage comes through in the way that we have everything budgeted on our side, we're still looking at about a $10,000 overrun for city funds, but that's with, this is a little bit of an approximation, but I believe about 100 to 150,000 of additional grant funds. So it's a significant amount if the grant doesn't get approved, or the overage doesn't get approved.
Thank you.
The Highway 99W street lighting project, we're saying we're about 60% design complete. We're actually further along than that, but there's been some scope changes, and mostly positive scope changes. There's a proposed Odot project along 99 right now that's in design that's going to be completing some sidewalk infill and then paving all of 99 from McDonald Street to the northern city limits. And as part of the Odot work, we found out that we had some scope overlapping with their project. So they're removing a few intersections out of our 99W street lighting project that the state is going to take care of. But then because there's a cost savings by doing that to us, we negotiated with Odot to add the Bull Mountain Road 99W intersection to our scope. And that will include street lighting and also bike ped improvements to the intersection, along with some signal improvements. So we're adding some scope, taking some scope away. Budget's going to stay the same or actually be decreased even with the additional work. The IGA has been amended and signed by the city, and we've sent it back over to Odot for their processing. And as soon as it's inked on their side, our design team will continue on with the Bull Mountain design and get that out for bidding as soon as possible. But I mentioned the 99W paving project. We're closely coordinating the lighting project with them because some of the work would be redundant, and we're actually slipping some of our work into their project to minimize the impacts to the area with two projects. ADA right-of-way program, between the ADA program itself and then some of the ramp work that we had to do just as part of our pavement management rehab work, we've upgraded or improved 49 ramps this year. This was the first year of really doing a wide range of just upgrading ramps and working towards becoming more ADA compliant around the city. So we're hoping to continue with those numbers next year or even increasing, and it really just depends on the complexity of each ramp and how far we can stretch the budget for locations. But right now we're right around 50 ramps per year, and we'll report back next year on how many we're able to achieve. Transportation major maintenance, that's just an ongoing program working with Washington County to maintain our signals. The fiber network program is a annual program as well. We're starting to add conduits and fiber throughout the city so that we can start connecting our signals and become a little more efficient on maintaining our traffic and maintaining the flow through the city. Main Street Phase 2 project. We have 100% plans on our desk right now being reviewed and completing all the finishing touches on the contracts, and those will be going out for bids hopefully early September. We're going to give the contractors a year on the schedule to complete the work so that we can hopefully get good bids and make sure that we stay within budget and have a successful project. But our team's been doing a lot of outreach to the businesses, working through the Chamber of Commerce, and communication team has put together some really useful maps for downtown to help out the businesses with communications on, yes, we're open, here's how to get here, and then show the other projects, other developments that are going on, just because there is going to be a lot of impact to the downtown area when these projects all take off. I'll just touch on a few of these water projects really quick. Some of them are actually completed already. The Cache Reservoir project, we have the RFP in final draft mode. We're doing our final review this week, and we have a schedule penciled out that if all goes well, we'll be looking at awarding contracts by the end of this year to move into that design build process of taking care of the alternate bid type delivery for Cache Reservoir. The Red Rock Creek water line, which is also known as Milton Court. I have some photos of this at the end of the presentation. Our presentation does say it's currently under construction, but we just completed construction in the last few days. We had to do some extensive coordination with the railroad, and we are now beyond all that. And that was a key connection for our water system. There was a couple dead ends, and that project is completed. The Water Master Plan, as you all know, was completed and adopted this year. Let's see here, and then the ASR number 2 and number 3. If you go out towards Elizabeth Price Park on Bull Mountain, you'll see a drill rig out there. They are actively working on the well portion of that project, and then the facility design portion is about 90% complete. So that's on budget and on schedule, moving along. Our sewer projects, we have our annual program for major maintenance. That's just small projects that we mostly design in-house or use some quick on-calls to deliver, and then majority of that work our operations staff deliver. Those are all on budget and schedule. And then we had 3 other projects that have been completed this year. Some storm projects. Another annual project, our major maintenance, similar to the others, are on budget and schedule for the year. We completed a project on 124th and Ann, and then the Fruing storm line replacement. I believe we may have shared photos of that, the culvert replacements at a previous CIP update. That project has also been completed this year. The Tigard Triangle Stormwater Plan, that was a CWS-led sub-basin strategy. That is now complete, and what that allows us to do is we can charge the developers a fee in lieu of constructing their on-site detention, and then we start collecting these fees to help us pay for future Red Rock Creek restoration projects. And one of those projects is actually going to be kicked off this year to get ahead of that program and start rehabbing Red Rock Creek. Kruger Creek stabilization, we're at 60% design on that one. The limits of the project is Bull Mountain Park down to Gardy, and I think everybody has heard about that stretch numerous times. So the canyons and everything else, all the problems that are out there are going to be taken care of in the next about 2 years. Get through design this year and construction next summer. The Washington Square Storm Retrofit Plan, we've decided to delay that to next fiscal year, and mostly so that we could incorporate the findings from the current planning efforts that's taking place around Washington Square. An Oak Street property, that's a house that we have near Oak Street and Hall. The plans are ready and going out for bids here shortly. And then just some of the other projects. The big one here to note is the Public Works facility and yard. We are currently evaluating 2 locations, and our team is planning to come back to council for an executive session at the end of September with more information on the 2 locations, so that we can hopefully proceed with purchasing that property shortly. So just a few fun photos to share. This slide and the next one that I'll show is the Milton Court Red Rock Creek waterline relocation project. That project, just because of the work zone and the impacts that a typical open cut water main project would have, we decided to deliver this one as a directional drilling method. And basically what it is you have HDD pipe that's all fused together into one pipe. They drill it in underground, and then on each end you just have to connect to the existing water main. So here you see the pipe as it's all laid out, fused as one piece, and in the lower left-hand corner the photo here, you see a metal rod basically coming out of the ground. That's what they connect the water main to, and they pull it back underground. So at the other end, this is just some of the piping that they had to do to make the connections. And this contraption on the left-hand side where the two gentlemen are in the hole working there, that's the device that's used to fuse the metal fittings and the flanges onto that HDPE pipe. It's basically like a PVC pipe basically, but it's called HDPE. They have to fuse a fitting onto it, and then they can do your normal connections with the bolted flanges for construction. And then this is our Cook Park ball field project. Most of you probably have seen the finished product, but I just thought it was interesting to show a few of the photos as it was under construction, basically rolling out the carpet and making everything look nice. And then this is our Wall Street Tech Center Drive project, showing a complete street design. We got sidewalks, bike lanes, some nice landscaping, and all the stormwater treatment that we had to do for that project. So with that, I will open it up to any questions or comments that anybody may have. And
we always love the pictures. Thank you. Both in process and the pretty ones. Council, who's got questions or comments? No to Council President Lube. Councilor Shaw, anything? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And thank you so much, City Engineer Wisniewski. Really appreciate the update. Question for you, and perhaps I'm a little sensitive to this as having been a former county employee, but noted your cynicism or a bit of cynicism just with Odot and the federal government, and wondering if there's a way we can help smooth that, get those projects back on track. It sounds like you're working closely with Odot, but is there a way we should be working with our state representatives, both the rep and Senate, but also our congressional members, to perhaps make it easier for you to get back to those green dots?
Yeah, so with that, I would say potentially we could use some council support, but I've had some good conversations recently with a few individuals at Odot. We're talking about some things that we can do to help this go a little bit smoother. Unfortunately, a lot of the issues that we have, Odot has as well, and it's really sad, but it's just part of delivering federal projects. But the amount of delay that we're having right now just seems to be extraordinary amount. So I would say for right now, let me continue those conversations, and I'll report back as soon as I feel there's a need to escalate it on our end to a representative level or something like that. And then I would definitely ask for council support to go that route. But at this point, I mentioned the North Dakota Street project and the delays on that one. My concern there is on the budget side of it more than the schedule, actually. As that gets delayed more, we start incurring inflation on labor and on construction. So my conversation with council might be more about what way do we want to go with any potential overruns, and having a conversation in the future with Odot about that. But I'll definitely report more, keep you all updated on how those conversations go with Odot. Hopefully we get a contract soon and we can move forward with them, and won't be an issue anymore. But I don't see this problem going away anytime soon on all federal aid projects. There's just a lot of a lot of boxes that need to be checked on Odot's side to get a project out the door.
Thank you.
All right. Youth Councilor Nog, anything? Councilor Newton.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm thrilled about the Wall Street project, because I was working for the city when that got initiated. So I keep going over there to see how it's going, and I'm just really thrilled that it finally got finished. So thanks for that.
I think it's exciting to hear that that we've got the project breaking ground, the development project, because that's been a long time coming too. Councilor Goodhouse. Nothing? Okay. All right, City Engineer, thank you for your time and robust report out tonight. I think our community, and I know the council, appreciates that, and good to see where we're at and know how some of our largest projects are going. So thank you.
Yep, thank you, and I appreciate your time.
All right, we'll move on to item number 5 on our agenda, which is to receive an update on urban planning area agreement with Washington County and to consider resolution 21-31. And Assistant Community Development Director McGuire, you are presenting.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council. I am Tom McGuire, the Assistant Community Development Director. And before you tonight is a resolution to update our urban planning area agreement with Washington County. This document was last updated around 2009. There's been a number of changes in the area since that time. Additionally, Washington County is in their cycle of updates. They have these types of agreements with all the jurisdictions in Washington County, and it's our turn. I believe they're probably going in some sort of alphabetical order, so I think we've been last, but not least. The types of changes and updates, there's been obviously the expansion of the urban growth boundary, the expansion of the city boundary, our annexation of that area. All of those things are now reflected in the urban planning area agreement, and the need for urban planning of the new urban reserve areas. Those are all things that happened in the last 10 years or so. Additionally, there are some projects and some other things in the urban planning area agreement that were completed, Murray Boulevard and a few other specifically mentioned things are in the agreement, and so those have been removed. So it really is a just an update and a cleaning to get that agreement current. And I'm afraid I don't have any nice pictures to show you, but that completes my presentation.
Thank you. Any council members have questions or want to make a motion? Councilor Newton.
Just really quick, I sent an email to Mr. McGuire and he was very prompt in responding. And my 2 questions were regarding the information that was included on Tile Flat Road, because the agreement that had a lot of information about specifics for Murray Boulevard was sort of problematic. And Mr. McGuire thinks that the information we've included on Tile Flat Road is general enough that it will be more workable than our language on Murray Boulevard was. And the other thing is, in the past, we've always included information about annexation. So I asked Mr. McGuire what the county's expectations are around that, and not to put words in Mr. McGuire's mouth, but I believe he said that that was going to be handled separately. So I just want to make sure going forward that the city and the county are clear about expectations regarding annexation, because we've always had some pretty detailed information in these agreements about that in the past. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions before we let Councillor Shaw make her motion? All right, Councillor Shaw.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 21-31.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution number 21-31. A resolution amending the existing urban planning area agreement between the City of Tigard and Washington County to reflect changes to the urban growth boundary, the city's urban planning area, and the need for urban planning of the urban reserve lands.
And City Recorder, a roll call vote starting with Youth Councillor Nog for an advisory vote.
All right, Youth Councillor Nog.
I approve of resolution number 21-31.
Council President Lube.
Yes.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
Councillor Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councillor Newton.
Yes.
All right, resolution 21-31 is adopted unanimously. Thank you. And we got through our first Youth Councillor advisory vote. All right, we'll move on to item number 6 on the agenda. And Mr. McGuire, thank you for presenting tonight. We'll move on to item number 6, which is the American Rescue Plan Act funding recommendations. Senior Management Analyst Hendricks for the introduction.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Nicole Hendricks. I'm the Senior Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office. And we are here tonight to continue our conversation from the August 10th City Council meeting regarding our American Rescue Plan investments. And so at that meeting, you asked our team to kind of do a needs assessment of ways we can do some immediate support for families and businesses, and based on that, provide recommendations tonight. So since we spoke last, we have reached out to about 23 different nonprofits and faith-based organizations in Tigard who have participated in our community roundtable or also have been past applicants of previous grant programs. And we asked them to share some immediate needs they have, but also some future needs that they can anticipate as it relates to the impacts of COVID. We also asked how they saw the city supporting them. And so I've been able to connect with about 14 of those organizations, and through those conversations, we've identified a handful of needs. And that includes operational support. So things like expanding hours or staffing and making just their services more available to more people. And that ranged from homeless services to mental health services. We heard from Just Compassion and New Narrative and also Family Promise about this item. And then we also heard the need for people to access their services and connect the resources to connect people to the resources in these organizations. So we have been doing like social media posts and Cityscape newsletter posts about resources, but I also think with a new website around the corner and being able to feature community support services, that will also help. And then we also heard a demand for housing. So with the rise in COVID cases and actually like winter season coming around the corner, there's serious concerns about shelter capacity and the need for more hotel or motel housing. Family Promise currently has 93 households on their wait list, and this is technically their like slower season. And their executive director said that amount is unprecedented for them, and she expects it to only increase as we get into the winter season. So we also heard a need through like the Domestic Violence Resource Center for that motel stays and housing assistance as well. We also heard about childcare needs, especially just upcoming needs for that. And St. Anthony's mentioned support for their extended childcare services. And our team is also connecting with the school district and childcare providers to learn more about what that might look like. But we know that would support both our families and our businesses. So that would be awesome to be able to do something for that. And then I actually have one more thing to add, since this PowerPoint slides were submitted last week, and we're still continuing these conversations, but we heard a lot about food support. There were some mentions of food needs from St. Anthony's, Packed with Pride, Comac, Bethlehem House of Bread, St. Vincent de Paul, and the Muslim Educational Trust. So there were a lot of folks who have food box programs and pantry support, and they all expressed interest in applying for funds if there was a grant program available. And so from those conversations in the longer term, our team is kind of looking at expanding current community grant programs to include community building initiatives. So we're looking at expanding criteria and audience for those grants in the longer term. But for tonight and for this more immediate response, we're recommending allocating the American Rescue Plan funds for another round of the Residential Aid Fund of Tigard, which is called the RAFT grant program. And so the RAFT program responded to the COVID-19 emergency, and it established a grant fund to provide immediate aid to housed and unhoused residents. Eligible organizations included nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and others. And there were 2 grant rounds that awarded 8 different partners. And so our goal with proposing a 3rd round of RAFT would be to support our partners with their current needs that they've identified and filling gaps by focusing on growing needs like childcare that would support both, families and businesses. So that's on kind of the family, nonprofit, community support side. And then on the business side of things, what we heard is a need for support with staffing and retention right now. Our economic development manager offers these monthly office hours for businesses to meet and share needs. And in the last 6 months, there's been two requests for grants. So it's been somewhat slow on that side of things. But we are looking into setting up another loan program that we did in partnership with MISO and Craft 3. In fact, that program that we did last year with Craft 3, their loan program was oversubscribed almost immediately, and then MISO's loan program is still making loans to Tigard businesses and entrepreneurs. So then in addition, our economic development team is also working on a lot of different programs, and I'll just name a few to give a sense of what's going on. So business education through a monthly workforce development webinar. So they partner with WorkSource Oregon and other cities, and there's actually one next week for food business entrepreneurship, but also based on what we've heard from businesses, there's also going to be one in September now for how to recruit and find talent and help with those needs identified. They're also supporting through business training scholarships. So those who are seeking kind of advising services will provide some scholarships for businesses through that. And there's also plans for a drive-through career fair in Tigard in September, and that's still being kind of worked on, but that would have about 10 to 20 employers and folks can come and drive through a career fair. And then in addition to all of that, we also have aid with the business license, waiving fees for business licenses, and the utility assistance is still available through our Tigard Aid program. So there's a lot going on, and our economic development team is doing a lot more than that, but I just wanted to give a high level kind of overview of what is going on that addresses those staffing and retention needs, but also other business support needs. So our recommendations tonight, based on all that we've heard in the last 2 weeks, are to support a 3rd round of the RAFT grant program, and that would be $250,000. And then the second recommendation related to businesses is to monitor business needs as we continue to navigate COVID-19. We're exploring the loan program, doing another round of the loan program, in addition to the business workshops and the fairs and all that stuff that's already going on. So what our ask is tonight is that you receive the update that I just gave you, allocate $250,000 for a 3rd round of RAFT, and then direct our team to continue to monitor that business need as we navigate COVID. And with that, I am done. If you have questions or thoughts to share.
Nicole, I just want to make sure that, our community members are also recognizing and thinking about the fact that we already have a large amount of funding allocated to assist individuals all the way through next June, I believe. And so while that's not listed on there, that's a program that we already had plans to be out for an extended period of time. And I just want to make sure the community is aware of that and not missing that. So I see that and I guess I should confirm, there is no staff recommendation to change, increase, or otherwise modify that program, right? It's already adequately funded and available to help, correct?
Yes.
All right, it looks like every member of council would like to speak on this. So we'll start with Councillor Newton.
And I had my hand up last, thanks. Great report, Nicole. And I really appreciated the information that was forwarded about the contacts that you made with all of the nonprofits. One suggestion as we're moving through with RAF round 3, maybe if you haven't heard from everyone, just maybe one more contact just to make sure they get a chance. I'm wondering two things. I'm wondering if 250,000 is enough. Should we go up to 300,000? That's one thing I would wonder, and I would take your insight into that. And the other thing I would just comment on is our economic development team has always done a stellar job in being able to be proactive and anticipate what the business community's needs are. So I would trust that they'll keep on top of it as they always do. And if something changes, that they need some different resources, I would hope they would come back quickly to let us know that they need something else. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, and in response to the 250,000 amount, that was based on what we've heard so far. And yeah, like I said, we haven't heard back from everybody, and maybe if as we continue to talk to people, there might be more demand. But at this time, with the information we have, I do feel like the 250,000 is an appropriate amount. The last two RAF rounds were at 100,000 each time, so this is significantly larger than the last two rounds.
Youth Councillor Nog.
I really appreciated the presentation. It was super informative. My question was, with the rise of Delta variant cases, do you think we may need to consider a potential 4th round of RAF funding in the future?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that could be a possibility. I think that's why we're trying to, with this ARPA investment planning, trying to do this incrementally to see what happens with COVID. And that's why, again, I guess to Councillor Newton's question, what we're hearing now is I think around this 250,000 amount, and we don't know what needs we might have down the line as COVID continues. So that might be potentially a need we might have, but for now, we're doing round 3. Thanks.
All right, Councillor Goodhouse.
A big part of this I don't see in a problem. I know that the RAF part is needed and so forth, but the big part when we talked about it before was really for businesses as well. So I mean the RAF part and those people in need are needed, but I don't see anything on here with businesses. I know that talking about this and leading up to it was, I'd kind of made a comment that, go slow on this and wait and see what happens with mask mandates or closings or any of that. There was almost a chance of indoor dining being banned, which would really hurt a lot of businesses. So taking this slow with these expenses, but I don't see anything in this for businesses. I know another agenda item, we're talking about homelessness, but a lot of the businesses are really having to spend extra money or really being affected, or downtowns really being affected by the increase of homelessness due to the pandemic. And it's something that I can't wait. And I think a lot of this money, or there's a good portion of the money, should go to businesses around Tigard and helping with either we have one side we're giving money for homeless for the services and so forth, but nothing's going to the businesses to help them or to prevent the issues that are going on or to clean up or the assistance they need. So I think we're really missing a big part when I know, at least I said before, that we allocate some money towards businesses, and I don't see anything that's going a loan. No businesses want to take a loan during this time to take care of matters that if they don't know they're going to survive or get through it. So I wish there was some assistance in here for businesses, or next week, or if we hold off on this package until there's more assistance for our businesses throughout Tigard.
Councillor Goodhouse, do you have a proposal or a suggested approach to this and an amount of money that you think is appropriate? Because what I'm hearing the staff say, I mean, to kind of paraphrase what I heard from Senior Management Analyst Hendricks, is that our economic development staff are monitoring and having those conversations and are trying to make sure that needs are being met, and they're not seeing or hearing specific needs. Nicole, is that an accurate summary of what I heard you say on this point, on this subject?
Yes.
Okay, so given that, I guess I would go back to Councillor Goodhouse and say, just try to clarify, what are the specific needs? I heard you talk about the impacts to homelessness downtown, so that's something to consider, but do you have other specific needs in the business community you're seeing and then a corresponding proposal to address those, or do you just want this continued to be looked at, or?
So thank you for that clarification. So there's many aspects, whether or not it's cleanup or help or patrol for homeless. Then also due to the pandemic and just with the different situations, there's been a large staffing problem throughout Tigard. And I want to also, just for full disclosure, just because I'm a business owner doesn't mean I'm trying to advocate for myself in Tigard. So I want to make that clear that I'm not asking for any help for myself. But many businesses, are having to close or be closed or close early because they can't find staffing. And so if there's some of this money that due to that, the pandemic caused them not to have staff, if there was some kind of incentive or so forth that can be used from this money to get additional staff, or their business isn't quite there, if there can be part of this money used as well to bring business back to Tigard businesses. But we're looking at staffing, we're looking at people coming there. If there's reductions with going back to face masks, whether it be gyms, other places that are being affected by memberships dropping back again because face masks and people don't want to work out. And I think just more of a way to communicate. I know we have some sources, but I find myself talking to businesses that don't realize that they can still get the utility bill credit. They say, well, that only counts if I get the bill directly. I just talked to a couple last week that didn't realize that they can get that money this whole time and they would have been using it. So maybe some of this money is even used for communication of what can be done for the businesses, or more of a contact list. But I would like to see the same dollar amount answering the mayor's question, $250,000 being used towards all those areas I mentioned, with assistance with the effect from homelessness to businesses, staff, bringing business to Tigard businesses, and just more of a robust communication system of how to communicate with the businesses and know what they need. Because unless someone's part of the chamber or something like that, they're not really being reached or heard, so we don't really know what everyone needs. But look around at how many businesses are closed on days they should be open because they can't find staff.
Okay, so Councillor Goodhouse, I'm going to circle back with the rest of the council, both folks that haven't spoken yet, and then go back to council members that already have, and I'm going to ask them to comment on their perspective on that proposal. And Nicole, is Mr. Purdy on or attending tonight? He is not. Okay. So he may need to watch this section of the meeting, depending on how things go and what decisions are made. I'm sure you'll all make that happen. Let's go to Council President Lube.
Thank you, and thank you, Nicole. That was really helpful. I'd like to echo Councillor Newton's comment that the extra sheets were really helpful just to see sort of an individual basis what everyone was looking for. A couple of questions. One of them is around the funding amount. I know, as I was an active participant in the second round of funding, one of the biggest things that the groups were asking for was a significant amount of money to be able to do something, right? Like $5,000 wasn't enough to make an impact. And so, kind of going off of the discussion topics, is $250,000 really enough to impact a wide variety rather than just sending it, to 4 different groups to really make sure that we're spreading the impact and each of those is having a significant enough impact?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like, with the second round, there was that desire for maybe those larger amounts of funding. But I think with the first round, there was also asks for smaller, like even $5,000 amounts. So I think what we were talking about internally was potentially doing a mix of like, if it's 5, 10, 20 or plus, I think balancing out the big asks and the small ask, I do think $250,000 is an appropriate amount. but with the idea that there's going to be a desire for varied amounts, not just those large asks.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And sort of to also speak to Councilor Goodhouse's discussion topic, I'm not opposed to doing some more things for businesses, certainly. I think the topic of the issues with homelessness is good for the next step and not necessarily tying to this one. I'd like to keep those sort of separate discussions and issues, even if we use the same funding mechanism. I think that's an entirely different conversation. But I would say that I don't want to, much like we talked about 2 weeks ago, I'm not comfortable with sort of giving a blanket check, like an open check amount, and not having a plan and a strategy as far as what we're funding. And so, you know, the way that we have outreach to different groups, I would also encourage us to outreach to different businesses to really hear what they're needing and be able to have a presentation on what their needs are, so we can have an intelligent discussion on what people are actually asking for, to be able to fund it from there. And so I'm certainly not opposed to it, but I'm not going to sort of write a blank check tonight without having an in-depth conversation of what's being needed and having outreach from the city in that regard. So that's where I stand on that topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Lube. Councilor Shaw.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Couple of things. One, thank you so much, Senior Management Analyst Hendricks. I appreciate the presentation. Two questions. One, you mentioned child support. Can you just give a little bit more character and flavor to what you mean? We're going into Delta, we're going to more increase of COVID-19 cases. What does that mean? And ensuring that we're going to keep, of course, children safe, but also just what does that entail? And then the second question is probably more of a comment than a question, but as you've been doing an excellent job of reaching out to the nonprofits, I'm sure Economic Development Director Purdy has done the same with businesses, but just to ensure that they're equal outreach.
Yeah, thanks for those questions. In terms of the childcare needs, so we, from a child care provider standpoint, staffing has been a similar issue. That's why I mentioned like that business and family support. So staffing and also capacity limits, especially with COVID, how many kids can be with a provider at once. There's also on the family side, folks who are trying to find work, but also having to care for the kids, but not having that space available. So I think there's a large demand, and depending on just seeing how this school year goes with COVID again, I think it'll be interesting to see how that develops and be prepared to help with that. And then your second question was asking about business outreach.
It's not really a question, it's just more just to make sure we're weighing them equally if possible. So we're just making sure there's outreach.
Yeah, and our economic development manager does a lot of that. And so I'll follow up with him and get kind of a more comprehensive understanding of what like businesses we are talking to, and that can be kind of a follow-up conversation to make sure that those are equal.
Great.
I mean, I've heard at least 3 members of the council now, the last 3 that have spoken, kind of requesting that there be a more robust assessment of business needs done that we can be confident in. And I would certainly support that as well. Sorry, Councilor Shaw, did you have more? No? Okay.
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, Youth Councilor Nog, do you want to make any kind of comment on Councilor Goodhouse's proposal or request around business assistance?
I personally think that it should be a separate discussion topic with something that Councilor President Luke said, but I definitely think business outreach is important due to, the rise in the Delta cases. It's definitely impacting the economy now, and I think more outreach would definitely be good.
Thank you, Councilor Newton.
I concur with what's been said on that topic. I think like we had the sheets that senior management Analyst Hendricks prepared for the community needs. A little bit more detail on the business needs would be important, and so I would support some additional support, but I concur with Council President Lube. I think we need to know a little bit more specifically what the ask is. Thanks.
All right, so it sounds like there's broad support for a more robust assessment and report out of what the findings are on the needs of the business community in the current environment, both with Delta variant, COVID-19, and perhaps other sort of economic factors that are at play right now that may be directly or indirectly related to the pandemic. Councillor Goodhouse, sounds like you got support, generally speaking, for your proposal, and that's going to need to come back. City Manager Reimer, and Management Analyst Hendricks, that's going to need to come back hopefully pretty quickly at a future council meeting. I would think in the next probably no more than 3 weeks, and preferably 2 weeks. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, councilors and mayor, we'd be looking at either September 7th or 14th. So we'll talk with our economic development manager, Purdy, and then set the date. But right now we could aim for the 7th and see if that is doable.
Councillor Goodhouse, does this meet your expectations and needs?
Yes, and the one thing is, I think that we need, even if maybe we need to spend some money to figure out the communication, we drastically need to change how the outreach is or how it's done. I mean, the mayor, you and I were at an outreach with businesses in the Plaza, and none of them heard it through their normal channels, through the city or the chamber. And so if we're doing the same old business as usual, thinking that the chamber or what email list we may have works, it no longer works. And so we can't say that no one has any needs when our communication style is so outdated.
So the assessment needs to include an evaluation of our communication mechanisms and with the business community and recommendations from that. Okay.
Well, the business owners that were there was because I had sent them about the meeting, but it's so outdated that we can't say that no one needs when we're not hearing from anyone because they don't hear from us.
All right, so City Manager Reimer and Management Analyst Hendricks, you got that as well?
Absolutely.
All right, so there's a proposal, I think, or a staff recommendation, I should say. It sounded like there was some little bit of discussion about the amounts, but generally was supportive of starting here with the staff recommendations. I didn't hear a lot of objection or any objection directly to not moving forward with the staff recommendation. So is there a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to move that the American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funding recommendations from Senior Management Analyst Hendricks and team be approved.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, a roll call vote, please, starting with Youth Councillor Nog.
Youth Councillor Nog.
Yes.
Council President Lube.
Yes.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
Councillor Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councillor Newton.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, staff, for that hard work and quick turnaround, and we will look forward to it again in 2 or 3 weeks. Thank you. All right, item number 7 on the agenda is to receive an update on homelessness and our response to homelessness. We have Chief McAlpine and Library Director Bernard.
Thank you, Mayor Snyder. Just one moment as I share my screen. And I hope you can all see what I'm seeing.
We can.
Thank you so much. Good evening again, Mayor Snyder and City Council, Tigard community members, and city teammates. My name is Halstead Bernard. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of the Tigard Public Library. I'm here tonight to present an update on our city's homelessness response and then ask for your input. We have a lot to cover, so I'll try not to delay. When we met earlier this year to develop City Council goals, it was clear that addressing homelessness in our community was a priority. Homelessness or houselessness in our community and in our region has been increasing, and the pandemic has also increased its visibility due to a lack of spaces where unhoused residents can safely exist. The language of our goal is very intentional. We say actionable because we understand that all the planning in the world is no good without action. We say person-centric because unhoused residents are human beings. They're parents, their children, their neighbors, their community members, and they deserve dignity and respect. And our response must center their experiences, not to the exclusion of everyone else, but as an integral part. And we say regional because no city can solve this complex constellation of issues for all of our neighboring cities. There must be a coordinated response. So our first step was to form an internal project team, including teammates from community development, public works, police, library, and city management. At our first meeting on August 11th, we reviewed the recommendations from the Task Force for the Homeless and compiled updates on what has been implemented, what has not been implemented, and what will require additional consideration and guidance. We've determined that our next steps will be to conduct a gap analysis of services that are available and those that are needed in our community, and from that develop a 6-month milestone plan. But first, I'd like to review the Task Force for the Homeless recommendations, starting with those that have been implemented. The first was the city should continue to provide in-kind support, printing, graphics design to nonprofits addressing homelessness. So the city designs and prints homelessness resource cards. The A side is the winter shelters. Can't quite see because of my blurred background, the winter shelters, but I'm showing you on my slide the B side, which is actually the thing that we use the most to interact with unhoused residents. So the city designs and prints these, and they're used at Just Compassion. They're laminated, they're very heavy duty. The Tigard Public Library and Tigard Police also use these cards when interacting with unhoused residents. The cards are printed in both English and Spanish. And as you can see, there's 6 different resources that people can use, from food, from laundry services, from showers, and from connecting people with resources to get housing. Next recommendation, the city should continue to fund a post office box for Just Compassion to use for their homeless clients. And this is true. A key need for unhoused residents is the ability to receive mail. This is important because a mailing address is required for job applications and social service programs. The city continues to fund the cost of renting a post office box, and Just Compassion manages this box and ensures that clients are aware of its availability. The next recommendation, the city should create an internal tracking system to track homeless-related incidents. And the Tigard Police Department has adjusted their internal tracking system to better account for incidents involving unhoused residents. The city will continue to review this tracking system for opportunities to gain better data. The next recommendation, the city should participate in the annual point-in-time count. So this point-in-time count is a count of sheltered and unsheltered individuals on a single night in January. On the local level, point-in-time counts help communities plan services and programs to appropriately address local needs, measure progress in decreasing homelessness, and identify strengths and gaps in a community's current homelessness assistance system. Several city teammates participate in the point-in-time count each January, and teammates then visit encampments, interview unhoused residents, and provide information on available resources. And teammates work with Washington County before and after and during the count to ensure a quality count. Next recommendation, The city should fund an annual Project Homeless Connect event, and Project Homeless Connect held a Tigard event in 2017. We'll talk about other events that we could possibly hold in the future on a later slide. So not implemented. The city, this is partially not implemented, but partially implemented. I'll explain why. The city should provide public bathrooms and or portable restrooms that are available 24 hours a day in the downtown core and surrounding neighborhoods. So the recommendation for restrooms has been partially implemented, but not as a result of this task force recommendation. There are currently 2 public restrooms, one permanent, one temporary in the downtown core. There's a restroom facility at Rotary Plaza, and it was installed as part of the Plaza and Trail project, and like I said, not as part of this task force recommendation. Since its construction, however, the Plaza restroom has been vandalized and damaged repeatedly, and recently city building maintenance staff worked with the chamber to install cameras that help cover the plaza to help with these issues. There's also a portable restroom at Universal Plaza. That's placed there to support all users of the space and not as a result of COVID or as a targeted service for unhoused residents. So this is still not really implemented, partially implemented. The next recommendation, the Tigard Police and New Narrative, which was formerly Lukedorf, should partner on homeless outreach. So the Tigard Police has partnered not with New Narrative, but with Just Compassion for outreach in the community, connecting unhoused residents with supportive services. A few years ago, the library team attempted a partnership with New Narrative to connect unhoused residents that were visiting the library with supportive services. But in both cases, city teammates have struggled to maintain these partnerships through organizational turnover and sometimes just lack of organizational resources on the part of the local nonprofits. But there's great benefit in us pursuing these partnerships with our local organizations. They're the subject matter experts, and they know the best ways to connect people with the resources that they need. This last one on this slide, so far as funding overtime for outreach to unhoused residents, this would allow for greater flexibility in conducting outreach, and that is an outstanding, not implemented recommendation. Coming up next, the city should appoint a homeless services coordinator. Hiring a homeless services coordinator would provide a single point of collaboration and communication for external partners and internal city teammates who are responding to the impacts of homelessness in our community. It would also add a subject matter expert to the city's team, someone who would help guide the work we need to do in both short-term, immediate needs and long-term. The next recommendation, the city should approve a guiding statement for the approach to homelessness. So this is similar to an anti-racism action plan. We need a coordinated effort that provides cross-departmental guidance for teammates interacting with unhoused residents and trying to connect them with services. So this is where our person-centric commitment will be especially important, because we can't develop a guiding statement without hearing directly from those who are most impacted by our approach. And so far as the last 2 on this slide, the annual service event and the Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week proclamation, we could certainly host a service event like Project Homeless Connect to increase awareness, education, and availability of resources for unhoused residents in Tigard. And a proclamation for Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week may also increase awareness, but both of these have to be paired with a concerted response to long-term food and housing insecurity to be truly effective. Moving on, the next is the city should create a GIS map with resources available in Tigard and Washington County for people experiencing homelessness. So although this GIS map has not been completed, the city has created a map of sensitive wetlands, and our ordinances state that there can be no encampments on sensitive wetlands, so that it helps us uphold that code. And Washington County has already created websites that are very thorough for the Encampment Pilot Project, which you heard about 2 weeks ago, and the Supportive Housing Initiative. We'll talk more about those a little later. The second recommendation on this slide is telling the story. So why this is important. All too often we decenter or entirely omit the experiences of our unhoused residents. In a person-centric approach, we center the person experiencing the trauma of housing insecurity so we can learn and adapt and improve our response. On this next slide, the city should prioritize homelessness assistance on their legislative agenda. So this is a concrete step we can take. Recently, 5 different bills passed in Oregon having to do with homelessness, and more are sure to be introduced all over as we all do this work. And the city should support the continuation of the task force for the homeless. So as for its continuation, while this didn't happen in 2017, recently we have been asked about this task force by city teammates, by you all, by the council, and by business owners. But before I talk about this last recommendation, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the feedback we've received from local business owners. So since the beginning of this year, we have received 74 calls, emails, and social media comments from business owners and other community members concerned about the uptick in visible houselessness in downtown Tigard and its impacts. We heard that sense of urgency and decided to hold 2 preliminary listening sessions as soon as possible. These listening sessions were attended by 7 Tigard business owners, the chief, the mayor, and myself. And in these sessions, concern was expressed about immediate impacts to property, customers, and employees of Tigard businesses. Some of the issues we're hearing about, including trash, vandalism, blocking sidewalks, are issues that are already addressed by existing municipal code. So at this time, we are not recommending municipal code changes. However, we do propose creating a city assessment team of a community service officer and a code compliance officer to check in and evaluate the downtown impacts. Once we clearly identify the specific activities to address, we can then determine if an ordinance is appropriate. Another step that came out of these listening sessions, the city will take is creating a resource sheet that businesses can use to get help from existing local organizations and county programs, building on the homelessness resource card that police and library teammates use that I shared earlier. And all of the listening session attendees agreed that it was time for us to reconvene a group like the Task Force for the Homeless to help determine our community's immediate and long-term needs. To this end, we propose establishing CHART, which stands for Community Homelessness Assessment and Response Team. This community team will be comprised of our council representative, Councillor Shaw, members of the business community, community-based organizations, Tigard Chamber of Commerce, Tigard Downtown Association, unhoused residents, and city teammates. And this team will meet regularly to provide insight and recommendations to City Council, to discuss needs in our community, and to identify key partnerships and projects, such as wraparound services. And I'd like to mention what we mean specifically when we talk about wraparound services, because it's kind of a specific phrase. So wraparound services are services that help stabilize and house an unhoused residents. These could include tiny villages, sleeping pods, safe lots, lockers, restrooms and porta potties, Portland loos, hygiene stations, hand washing stations, mobile showers, trash collection, and mobile laundry facilities. There are 2 county programs that I'd like to mention before we open the discussion for your input tonight. And the first is the Supportive Housing Services Program. So on May 19th, 2020, Measure 26210 passed with 58% of voters and established the Regional Supportive Housing Services Program, which is funded with a new income tax on high earning households and a business profits tax. These funds are distributed by Metro to the 3 counties within the Metro boundary, and these 3 counties will each develop and enhance local homeless and housing systems of care while working together to address homelessness across the region. So getting back to the regional response part of our goal. The SHS program will be the largest per capita investment in the nation dedicated to ending homelessness with supportive housing services. So some of those examples could be investments in supportive housing, long-term rent assistance, outreach and housing navigation services, emergency shelters, behavioral health and recovery supports, culturally specific services, and much more. The second that I wanted to mention is the county's outreach and encampments initiative. So as we heard about a couple weeks ago about the homeless camp management program, or we refer to it as the Washington County Encampments Pilot Project. This will run starting soon through the summer of 2022 to improve homeless camp management coordination across county departments and with our partners. So again, that regional response that we're focusing on. So to summarize, the internal project team working on Council Goal 1 has kicked off and is collaborating on our city homelessness response right away. We're looking forward to hearing your guidance on the recommendations from the task force that were not yet implemented. And we'd like your guidance to convene Tigard Chart, again, Community Homelessness Assessment and Response Team. So thank you for listening to me talk tonight. Happy to answer any questions or receive your input.
Thank you. And Councillor Shaw, I saw you had your hand up pretty early. Do you want to start?
Oh, I just want to thank Bar Upsey for the presentation, but also just since I wasn't here, those recommendations were from the 2017 task force, and those are the ones that were implemented and not implemented. I just wanted to make sure we're clear, and that wasn't a new task force that had just been established and worked on those.
That was 2017. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Goodhouse.
Yes, for clarification from Councillor Shaw before I make my comment. So are these just recommendations, as Councillor Shaw said from before, but and there were still, this is kind of the beginning part of addressing this issue, or we're okay? So I agree with that, and I just want to reiterate and kind of, I know that Hall had commented briefly on what some of the conversations were from the needs, but there's all these needs are all these different recommendations are great, but there's the flip side that's missing as far as all the different additional needs from business owners, from the business community, from the areas down there, anything from patrols to some kind of security through the morning and the evenings, lighting on trails. The trails after dark, a lot of the business owners or community members said that they don't feel safe walking on those. And this additional services, I know that people are talking about having to, clean feces off of around their storefronts or back ends parts, or cleaning up areas as well. So as we go forward looking at that, there's a whole lot of the other services that we're going to have to need to look at providing or taking care of to businesses throughout Tigard or neighborhoods that are experiencing a lot of these additional problems. So with this, it just seems to be very one-sided, which we need to do, and we need to take care of those that don't have homes. But there's also the other part of the community that's just getting really anxious and starting to get upset as far as a lot of things aren't being taken care of, as far as their needs are taking care of them or reimbursing. And as we mentioned with the previous agenda item, what funds from the ARPA funds could be used to assist in helping out the businesses, or securing our trails, or securing our downtown, so we don't start losing business or citizens that go down to our downtown area with the way the issues starting to happen down there a lot more.
Chief McAlpine, can you comment a bit on sort of what your perhaps short-term to medium-term thought is around trying to address some of the sort of downtown business and resident viability concerns? I know that you've got some staffing challenges right now, and I also know that the proposal that Director Bernard just put forward has this assessment team, but can you speak any further to what your at least immediate thoughts are on the public safety side of things?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. If you'll please indulge me, I'm going to try without my camera because my connectivity seems to be intermittent. So again, Chief Kathy McAlpine for the police department, also, Halstead's partner in this as we move forward. And you're right, both to the mayor and Councillor Goodhouse. In these listening sessions, there's clearly a lot of frustration, a lot of almost to the sense of wanting to take matters into their own hands. And so I just want to reiterate that was heard loud and clear. As said, and everybody agreed that this is not a police-led effort. This is a person-centric. With that said, what we've identified, again, so that it's not led by the police department, is we are calling the assessment team. These are both police officers, community service officers, our code enforcement. That assessment team, as we're calling it, not an enforcement team, is going down and assessing what they're seeing, what we can do, where we can make a difference. So it's how we lead and how we make our presence known. And we've already started more visibility. Now it's unknown to me, it's too early to know if the business community has seen us more. We certainly have been there more with an intentional effort. And it's with that visibility in mind. There is a robust discussion on, where is our reach? An example would be just on somebody sleeping in a doorway that is really technically private property. Yes, it could be trespass, but should we move them on behalf of the owner, which we could, what happens when they say no? Are we willing to do a use of force? Are we willing to arrest them where we cannot take them to jail? And I think we all are in agreement that arresting our way out of this is not the answer. But again, acknowledging the frustrations of our business owners. So we're looking at ways to mitigate that. I too heard, I come from an area that, a city that had business improvement areas where they used all kinds of things from street cleaning to bike patrols to depending on what the problem is. I know both the city manager and assistant city manager also have done those BIA or similar type programs, and we haven't had a chance to totally vet those out, but we've had some discussions on what that might look like, and if we do, then the possibility is using ARPA funds for that. It just needs to be vetted out more, because if you recall, it was pretty much a shotgun blast of all the issues that were going on downtown. And so trying to really narrow down what is our biggest impact that we can have and give really relief to our business owners and the patrons is what we're trying to do. So short answer, visibility, assessing the situation. We were dealing with motorhomes that were called in and things of that nature. So that's where we're at day to day right now. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Chief, can you comment also on, I know, I had proposed, at least for consideration, now that we've got some clarification about what maybe more of what is allowed and not allowed by some of the Ninth Circuit decisions, this idea that, giving our code enforcement staff and our police staff and perhaps others, something that they could use to make it clear to people that they can camp on public property, or I shouldn't say camp, sleep on public property, because that's required by the Supreme Court decision, but that they have to, during the day, pick up their sleeping materials and move along. My understanding, just from your presentation and from offline conversations, that you and Halstead and the city leadership team are not recommending that at this time. Can you comment on why, and are there any aspects that that make you think that might be useful? And part of why I'll prompt that a little further is that during a month and a half ago in our discussion around fireworks, homeless individuals and use of fireworks are not the exact same thing, but in that conversation, the sense was, well, if we take this or make this statement, it might help a little bit. It'll make our desires clear, and it also may allow, kind of on the margin for enforcement staff to maybe have a little more teeth than they would have otherwise. And I guess I'm just wondering, and that was a recommendation that staff made, and I guess I just want to clarify how, is this different enough that general concept doesn't apply, or do you think that it, that it does make sense to consider something like that?
I appreciate the opportunity to answer that question because it has been floating out there. And behind the scenes is a very robust conversation with City Attorney Rffa, both Boise, both what could we do and what are we trying to solve. And then if we were to, let's just put, no sleeping allowed during business hours or, post a time frame, which appears to be within Boise, do we have the resources to handle the calls for service? So are we setting up for failure, kind of like when we talked about fireworks? Is there higher priorities and we are not meeting the expectations? And really, is that the biggest problem of what we're dealing with right now, to go and actually change the ordinance specifically? And we believe that the assessment team is going to help us. We're going to have those conversations. We're going to see, is this one or two? Also, we heard from about 7 business owners who want enforcement action, but I know of many others who don't want police interaction, don't believe it's appropriate, and would not support it. And so for us to pick and choose which ones we're going to deal with, and it may be on a call-to-call basis, but there are many who believe fundamentally that police should not be interacting with our unhoused individuals in an enforcement effort. So again, with the officers feeling like, okay, you want me to go down here and rouse somebody from their sleep, where am I telling them they can go? I'm hoping that Washington County, their new employee, Josh, I've not met him, came from LA. He starts this week and we can start up those shelters, because under Boise, we're good if we have a place to send them. And once we have those temporary shelters, we can then wake somebody up and say, John Smith, whatever, hey, businesses are opening up. We need you to move. By the way, there is the sheltering. Do you want to go? Will you be willing to go? And we actually are then trying to help and facilitate. So I'm hoping that won't take too long, where we actually then can give them alternatives rather than just moving them on to the next entryway. And so we are talking about that. And right now, because of the photos that all of you have seen as well, those are actually private property entryways. And so it's adequate where our code is now, because the property owners can ask us to trespass, remove them. And of course, if they do call, that's what we would do. So there's no code revision at this time. And we may look at it later, as you said, but I'd rather have it assessed and then be able to back it up with personnel to be able to meet the expectations of our business owners.
Thank you, Chief. Councillor Newton, any questions or comments?
I'm really having trouble with this unmute button tonight. Sorry. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. And I really appreciate the team getting together with our business community quickly and finding out, what their concerns and needs are. I get contacted by community members who live here who don't want to call the police. To a person, they're very compassionate, but what they're calling me about is behavior that they see that they don't think is appropriate. Some of them are uncomfortable seeing somebody sleeping beside the side of the trail, but that isn't why they call. I've had people, one gentleman said, I'm no longer going to walk my grandchildren on the trail. 3 times of seeing feces and needles, and I'm done. And I'm not really interested in doing that anymore. And I don't know who to call when I see that. I'm not really comfortable calling the police because I don't know that this person should be arrested. So, and I hear about people who, I'm really concerned about the downtown businesses because a lot of people don't want to walk under Main Street. I live in the neighborhood. It's very walkable up by Fowler and Dirksen Park to walk downtown from my neighborhood. And a lot of the people in this area don't want to walk the trail. They'll walk the road, but they don't want to walk the trail under Main Street anymore because of the folks. So there's a lot of things when I talk with Director Bernard and the chief, more examples I can give, but I guess I would make a couple of comments or have a couple of questions. This homeless services coordinator, might that be the person folks who see something and are concerned about it be able to contact? because they're not sure what to do. And they don't really want to go online and fill out a form. I think they want to be heard, and they don't want to appear to be uncaring about these people, but they're concerned about some of the activities. So we need a fairly immediate connection for those people in our community who see that and want to find out what's appropriate to report, not report, what might happen if they do. So I would ask that question. And the homeless task force might be important. I didn't see just a basic residential community member on that task force. Maybe there's a member of one of our boards or committees that would be good to have there. But I think, you know, again, to a person, these people are concerned about these people. They don't think it's safe for them to be sleeping outside. They think everybody deserves a warm, dry place to sleep. But the few that they see and the behavior, some of the behavior being approached for money, those kinds of things make them nervous, and they don't really know what to do. So I think we need to look at the impacts on our community members by a few, and some of the behavior and how they can make a connection or get that addressed. And then I guess I also have a question about the tracking system, and if someone could tell me a little bit about what that's trying to capture. And those are my questions. Thanks.
Councilor Newton, may I clarify, when you say the tracking system, are you talking about Tigard's GIS or Washington County's? Just need a little bit more information.
I'm talking about the tracking system in Director Bernard's report that the police department already have, but you're adjusting it, or it was one of the already implemented recommendations that I think is being tweaked. Is that right?
Yes, if you recall, yes. Again, since I'm not on camera, Chief McAlpine. So if you recall, it's probably been now 3 years that I report out monthly what we call behavioral health incidents. And so those are tracked. Now, what's difficult about that is it can be a unhoused person, it can be a mental health episode, it can be drug or alcohol, or all of the above. But if it has one of those components, either told by the family members, self-disclosed, or there's an obvious assumption, again, I always say we don't diagnose, then I ask them to put BHI in the call, and then that's when I report out to all of you that on average 67% of our calls have some sort of component. Now, what Washington County is taking it one step further, because we all have different records management systems. We're not doing it in our reports, but in the CAD call, so the computer aided dispatch, there is a drop-down menu that will say, does this have to do with houselessness? And that just started in the last 2 weeks. And so there'll be another way that Washington County is going to gather that information and be able to get more details, because it'll be very specific to unhoused individuals.
All right. Director Bernard, did you want to respond to Councilor Newton's questions as well or not?
I did. Thank you, Mayor Snyder, and thank you, Councilor Newton, for the questions. I wanted to mention a Washington County resource that we use often at the library that I'm not sure many community members know about, and it's the Washington County Crisis Line. This is a behavioral health crisis line that is available to concerned community members, relatives of someone experiencing a behavioral health crisis. It's answered by people who have their experienced mental health professionals that can talk on the other end and ask specific questions about what the behavior is and offer advice. And they can even connect people with resources at the county level. And I just wanted to mention that as something that is a number that we do use at the city. We also give it out. That number is 503-291-9111. And it is a resource that we have used in the past. And I encourage people to also use that. And it's on the Washington County website under Washington County Crisis Line, if you want to look it up.
Right, and I'm aware of that, and I've suggested that. And to a person, they say, I want to talk to somebody at the city. I don't want to call the county. I want to talk to somebody at the city, and I want to have a conversation with somebody at the city. So I guess I would just offer that as well. They want somebody at the city to talk to, and that's why they call me, because they don't know who else to call. So these are usually people that I'm acquainted with. So thank you.
Thank you for the feedback.
All right, I do not see Youth Councilor Nog or Council President Liu. Youth Councilor Nog, go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot to raise my hand digitally.
That's okay.
Is there a plan for people who don't feel comfortable with the proposed housing system or like refuse help?
May I ask a follow-up question, Youth Councilor Nog? When you're talking about a plan with people who don't feel comfortable, you mean people who may have had experienced trauma, being placed in the shelter system in the past and may refuse services based on past trauma? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
So far as a plan, I mean, that is something that I know people who work in local nonprofits and at the county experience regularly, because not everyone who needs resources is obligated to accept resources, and people have a wide variety of reasons why they don't want to accept resources. So I don't really know how to answer. We don't have a specific plan. We try and connect people with resources in what's called a trauma-informed way, so that understanding that people have experienced trauma at the hands of institutions in the past and have mistrust. But so far as we can't force anyone to accept services. It's not their legal requirement to accept services. That's a very unsatisfying answer, but thank you for asking the question.
Council President Lube, did you have anything that you wanted to ask or comment on?
No, Councillor Newton addressed sort of what I've been hearing as well, so nothing to add.
Councillor Goodhouse, is that your hand up a second time, or is that from the original, or do you have more you want to say?
Second time.
Okay.
I was just, and I don't know how we are in time wise, just want to have more of a robust conversation, because I'm feeling that with a lot of the comments we're having coming in through council mail, that if we pass this part but don't address a lot of the other issues, that people may think again that everything's fallen on deaf ears. I know that the prior one we were talking about, if we wanted to put any or to start discussing putting some of the ARPA funds towards this to, you know, on the flip side, to take care of those cleanup parts or other turf things, or you know, discuss more what the mayor mentioned as far as the proposal of doing an ordinance change. You know, we have our homeless population we're taking care of, but then I know that there is out there, I think I've said before, there's, you know, Squat the Planet, where, you know, people sometimes look for areas where they can go to stay or get services. And if there's something on there that they're supposed to, or a city has an ordinance where you have to pick up your tent each morning and leave, maybe that might deter others to come here, and we take care of our homeless problem and our residents or people that fell on hard times here, and take care of that, and not make it as much as maybe, you know, something that maybe we start providing services then that draws, you know, others there. I mean, it's kind of a hard way to say that, but I'd like to talk more about what options we can do that, at least kind of like as the mayor said, you know, we did that firework ban where we didn't have the resources to enforce it, but at least knowing that's in place, it deterred a lot of that, those actions. But what we can also do, whether right now or if we hold this this vote off until another week or two, to add some of those parts in there, to do some funding to take care of, make the trails more safe, give some kind of something to business owners or some kind of cleanup for them as well. They're going through. So I just see that. I just hate to see that. That's one of the things I've heard is why people aren't talking anymore about what's going on, because they feel like they report all of it and then it gets heard, talks about briefly, and then nothing's done, and it goes back onto them. And that's where they start feeling like they're going to take matters in their own hands.
Might I suggest that if we're going to spend a lot of effort outreaching to the business community and asking about their COVID-19 needs and support needs, that perhaps we ask these questions support-wise as well, and just collect the information. We're already going to be doing the outreach. We might as well do and gather information from the business community, at least. That doesn't cover all the needs, but it at least would get information that might be helpful to inform what we may want to do differently. We may want to have a crew that goes through downtown every morning and make sure that there are no feces present all over downtown. And this, you know, I know we keep like people are bringing that up. This is not a situation that's happening once a month or once a year. This is now happening at businesses in downtown, the same business once a week, not once a year. And so to me, the needs are changing rapidly. And, you know, I don't know that when I think about it, that I think it's fully the business's responsibility to bear all that burden. And there may be a way of both preventing that by having adequate restroom facilities too. You know, we're the ones, I'll just be honest, we're the ones locking our own restroom down in over the evening, and then we're wondering why there's feces downtown. I mean, like, this stuff is all related. So I think an assessment that way may make sense. I see Director Bernard raised her hand as well.
Thank you, Mayor Snyder and Councillor Goodhouse. I did want to mention that that's exactly what the chief was talking about with this assessment team, is going downtown and assessing what is happening and then making recommendations based on those assessments. Like, we heard in those listening sessions loud and clear that our business owners do not find this an acceptable situation, even in the short term. So our response is to then send city teammates to assess what's happening and take a total tally so we know what we can address, what's already addressed with current municipal code, if there are new ordinances that need to be proposed, what's the feces cleanup plan, there's that word again, and other things that we absolutely need to address for our downtown core. And other parts of other business owners are struggling with other aspects. It's not simply the downtown core. So I think that is what we have proposed tonight. But if that's not sufficient, I would like to understand what an additional proposal would be.
Well, in addition to doing the assessment that you're talking about with people on the ground, if we're already going to be having the economic development staff calling many businesses in the community, I would at least collect this information that way too. It just seems logical to me. Councillor Goodhouse, do you want to say more in response to Director Bernard or what I've said?
Yeah, I think emphasizing that outreach, and then I'd like to see what we need to do to have language and putting in place that ordinance the mayor brought up with, as far as, you know, removing camping in the morning, or the camping can't be, you know, more than overnight. And I just want really kind of prevalent in this that you know, it's just not the one part, but there's also all these other action plans that we're going to be doing. And if we can get some kind of timeline done, so when residents and business owners see this, they have kind of a timeline to know when we're planning on looking at this coming back and actually have some actionable items.
Okay, so we'll let folks respond to that, or let the staff respond to that. I see Councillor Shaw, and then I actually would like each councillor to weigh in on whether they support bringing to council an ordinance like conceptually what's being discussed. So Councillor Shaw, why don't you go with your topic, and then maybe you can answer that too.
Certainly, Mayor. I was actually going to move ahead and make a motion just because I think a lot of the conversation could be a motion, but I support the establishment of chart, and also recognizing Councillor Newton's comment that a Tigard resident, if I'm using her words correctly, be included. I think a community resident or someone who lives is included as well. Thank you.
Are you making a motion, Councillor Shaw?
Oh, I'm happy to. I wasn't sure if others want to make comments before I did so.
Well, I didn't want to stop you from making a motion. That's absolutely within your right. So,
I guess the one question before I interrupt, though, is you did ask if we wanted to bring it back in their time, the ordinance discussion. So I don't know if we should do that before or after a motion's made.
Go ahead.
Well, Councillor Shaw, why don't you comment on that, and then I'll go around the rest of the council.
Sure. I support establishing chart. And are you asking, Mayor, if I go ahead and make a motion, or should I just wait? No,
I'm sorry. I was trying to prompt your thought on bringing back an ordinance that prevented or allowed sleeping on public property as is required by the Ninth Circuit decisions, but also requires that during some period of time during the day, like waking hours, that they be picked up and moved.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. That was going to be part of my motion to include that in the recommendations, but certainly, I know that's been, and I've heard from a number of businesses and community members alike. So I think in the interim, that's something pending both Chief McAlpine's recommendation, but also Library Director Bernard's, that's something we consider.
All right, Councillor Newton, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would welcome a discussion on that. Obviously, I know probably, as the chief said, City Attorney Rahala and the team is looking at that, but I would welcome a discussion on that so we can have a robust discussion here and get their thoughts on that. And I also really support the chart. I think having an assessment as quickly as we can get one is important. And I think fairly immediately, we need to look at the impact on our trail system. I'm worried about losing fans of our trails. We're starting to lose community members.
It's already happening.
Yeah, so I would support, not that you don't have a lot on your plate, Director Bernard, but that's something to think about moving forward as well. I think the chart for the downtown businesses is the immediate need, but we need to look at our trails as well.
Youth Councillor Nog.
I think that the things that are mentioned are good places to start. And I mean, I'm a big supporter of doing outreach to the homeless community because they're the ones that could fully articulate their own experiences and the resources that they need. So doing more outreach there wouldn't hurt as well. So those are kind of like my final words.
Thank you. Council President Lube.
I echo a lot of what's been said. I support moving forward with chart and really doing a robust assessment as quickly as possible. And I agree with the trails and the parks, especially with COVID continuing to, have us hunkered down. It just continues. Our trails and our parks are important places for people to be able to get out and to feel safe being in their neighborhoods. And so an assessment as quickly as possible and a robust discussion if an ordinance is warranted and recommendations would be appreciated.
All right, Councillor Shaw, let's hear that awesome motion. Oh, Councillor Newton. You're having mute problems again. Here, I can try to unmute you. Let's see if I can do that. No, I can't.
I got it. Sorry. I don't know what the problem is tonight. Anyway, operator error. Really quickly, I just wanted to double check. When I was on staff and Just Compassion was just starting, they had a houseless, formerly houseless person on that board too. Do we have that on our task force? I didn't remember and I was trying to scramble to look. But that was really helpful to have somebody who had been houseless or somebody who's currently houseless on that task force. So
I think that's a suggested change that the staff are on top of.
Okay, thanks. Couldn't find it.
Councillor Shaw, your motion, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I move we constitute with the inclusion of Councillor Newton's request for a Tigard resident chart, and we review the 27 recommendations that were implemented and those that were not to determine if still relevant or applicable, and to work closely with the city assessment team to develop new recommendations, regional solutions, as well as funding solutions in a timely manner.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, let's see. City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote, starting with Youth Councillor Nog for an advisory vote.
Youth Councillor Nog.
Yes.
Council President Liu.
Yes.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
Councillor Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councillor Newton.
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And Chief and Director Bernard, thank you so much for your work. And I know this is a big lift and it really means a lot to our entire community. So thank you. And with that, we'll move on to item number 8, which is non-agenda items and specifically a resolution to extend our emergency declaration. City Attorney Rffa.
Thank you, Council. Good evening. So when I last presented the extension number 8 at the end of June, we were cautiously optimistic that we were nearing the end of COVID. The Delta variant has turned that on its head. And so I'm before you tonight requesting a 9th extension of the city's emergency declaration related to COVID-19. This will allow us to continue the same procedures and regulations, policies that we have had in effect for quite some time now, so I'm happy to answer any questions. The recommendation is to continue this through December 31st of this year.
All right, is there any discussion or a motion or questions?
No, Mayor, I'm happy to make a motion. I move to approve resolution number 2132. Hope I got that right. City Attorney Rffa. Thank you.
I think you got it.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution number 21-32. A resolution of the City of Tigard extending the city's emergency declaration related to COVID-19.
And a roll call vote starting with Youth Councilor Nog.
Youth Councilor Nog.
Yes.
Council President Lube.
Yes.
Councilor Shaw.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
Councilor Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councilor Newton.
Yes.
All right, resolution number 21-32 is adopted unanimously. Thank you, City Attorney, for keeping on top of that. Administrative report, City Manager Reimer.
Good evening again, Mayor and councilors. I will keep my report brief since we still have 2 executive sessions and we're running a little long on time. I want to start by recognizing 3 of our police officers. The chief has done that recently. Officers Bunaveth, Northcote, and Thatcher for 2 separate life-saving incidences in July. The first one was related to a juvenile female that was threatening suicide. And the second was a fatal dose of heroin where our officers stepped in appropriately in both of those and did the necessary work, utilized their training, and happy to report that both of those were successful outcomes and they worked directly with those 2 individuals. So thank you very much to the PD. We recognize that these things happen day in and day out, and so we just wanted to bring a couple of these to your attention and thank them. In regards to our boards and commissions, we have talked with the council about our new approach. And so right now we have our applications open for September 1st through the 26th. Though with our new approach, these are also it's a year-round application process as well. And happy to report that we've already received 6 applications. For those, we have 18 different seats to fill. And it sounds like we have at least 6 incumbents that are going to be reapplying. So it'll be an active recruitment, but even starting this process, having it year round, you can see hopefully it's paying dividends to improve the access and awareness that we have our boards and commission openings. A couple things happening at our library with the most recent hot spell. Unfortunately, now we're talking about multiple ones in the summer. We served 133 community members at the library. So kudos to Halstead and her team, as well as many others in our organization, certain others that are involved in this, in making sure that all of our community have a safe place to be. Also, just a quick note on continuing to try to address the digital divide. We have submitted funds for laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots and looking for grant money for that. And so continue to work through that. And then just one last thing, like the good work by our police officers, every so often I like to read something that we get from one of our community members or patrons. And so this was for our library. In addition to the library being clean and COVID safe, their staff or team is top notch, friendly, helpful, and respectful to everyone who walks through the doors. I'd also like to thank TPL for all they do for helping people access computers, information, and even a place to stay during these dangerous hot spells. Truly an invaluable service to the people of Tigard. So the council's continued investment, the community's investment in our library, obviously, once again, also impacts people individually as well as the community as a whole. So thank you to, once again, to our library team and all of our teammates for the way they serve our community. And that concludes my abbreviated report this evening.
Thank you, City Manager Reimer. We are going to go into executive session. I want to make just a quick note to those that will be participating. I'm going to propose that even though we're running behind, I'm proposing a 5-minute transition break. So I think that, yeah, I'm seeing lots of thumbs ups. There we go. All right, so the Tigard City Council will go into executive session to discuss pending litigation or litigation likely to be filed under ORS 192.660 subsection 2H. All discussions are confidential and those present may disclose nothing from the session. Representatives of the news media are allowed to attend executive sessions as provided by ORS 192.660 subsection 4, but must not disclose any information discussed. No executive session may be held for the purpose of taking any final action or making any final decision. Executive sessions are closed to the public. This executive session will be followed by a second executive session to discuss real property negotiations under ORS 192.660 subsection 2E. Same provisions apply. The Tigard City Council will adjourn after the second executive session. I want to clarify, I'm concerned that the declaration I just read is not accurate. The second executive session is not for discussing real property transactions, is it? City Recorder Krager?
Yes. That's what I thought. Yes, it is.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I apologize for being confused. We will take a 5-minute recess and rejoin at 8:44 p.m. is what I'm seeing on the clock, or 8:45. Let's call it 8:45 and join the first executive session. Thank you.